So what's going on guys, Kate is here and welcome back to a brand new video. For today I will show you the top 4 best tank builds for PvP and PvE in New World. So for each and every single build I will explain what attributes, weapon masteries and even weapon and gear perks you want to have. Then what gems and specific gear you want to use to get out your stats as much damage and defensives as possible. Then as well I will show you the best gameplay of me using different weapons so you would know which abilities you want to use first on your enemies and much more. So if all this sounds interesting to you, then let's get right into it. So then moving over to the first build, which is the best tanking class. And for the weapons, we want to go with the sword and warhammer. And then these are the attributes you want to have. So then no matter from which level you start using this build, you first of all want to get your strength to 150. And then start building your constitution. And around level 60 you should have 250 strength and 200 constitution. And then last but not the least, for your gear you want to go with full heavy armor and you have to use a shield as well. So then for our first weapon we have the best tanking weapon, aka the sword with shield. And then these are the weapon masteries you want to have. So first things first, right off from the start you want to unlock both these two abilities called the shield rush and shield bash. And then get these 3 perks. Then afterwards get the last third ability called the defiant stance. And then get the next perk to him as well. And now let's move over to the other side and unlock both these 2 perks, and that's it. Now from this moment you can spend your points in whatever order you like. Okay, and now let's move over to the second weapon, which is the warhammer. And these are the weapon masteries you want to have. So first of all you want to unlock this one perk and then both these 2 abilities called the shockwave and then path of destiny. And then get these 4 perks. Then from here let's take a closer look at the other side and get these 2 perks. And then unlock the last third ability called the wrecking ball. And then get these 2 perks, and that's it. Now from this moment you can spend your points in whatever order you want. Okay, so now let's go over to the gameplay where I'll show you the best way to play this build. So then for the first weapon we have the sword, and the first Q spell is called the shield rush. And the spell makes your character run very fast for 5 meters. And if you hit the target while running he will get knocked back. Then the second ability is called the shield bash. And when you use it, it will deal a bit of damage and stun your enemies in front of you for 3 seconds. And by the way, this ability is the longest stun in the game. And if you're using the taunt gem for PvE, then this ability activates the taunt passive as well, which will make all the mobs that you hit aggro on you instead of your teammates. And then the third ability is called the defiant stance, which you can activate, and for the next 8 seconds your resistance is increased. Or again, if you're using the taunt gem, you can activate the spell and increase your threat level, which will make all the mobs target you for the second time. And as a tank, this is mainly what you want to keep on doing. So then moving over to the second weapon, which is the warhammer. And the first Q spell is called the wrecking ball, which when using makes your character strike down the ground with warhammer, dealing 130% damage and flattening your target in 1.5 meter range. Then the second ability is called the shockwave, and when using the spell it will give us the ability to slam down the hammer and create a small earthquake, and all targets standing in it will get stunned for 2 seconds. And lastly we have the F ability called the path of destiny, which creates a huge electric wave, and all enemies standing in this path will be taking bunch of damage. So the way you want to use this build for PvP or for PvE is to first of all remember your main job as the tank, which of course is to keep all the enemy attention on you, which you can do by first of all activating the shield bash ability, and in the next few seconds try to hit as many mobs as you can. Or in PvP you mainly use this ability to stun the target for 3 whole seconds. Then when that ability effect has run out, use your defiant stance, and this time all the enemies in 8 meter range will automatically aggro on you. Or in PvP, use this ability when the enemy players are constantly doing damage to you. So for that time you mainly want to use that shield mechanic and keep on blocking the incoming damage. And then lastly, if you ever see a healer or other DPS players in trouble, or if he gets overwhelmed by mobs or players, then use the shield rush ability and knock back the target. Then after that is done, we can now switch to the warhammer, and this weapon's main objective is to deal damage, stun your enemies and flatten the target. So while your most important tanking skills are on cooldown, you want to use the warhammer, and on grouped up enemies use the shockwave and then path of destiny, and this will stun and do AoE damage. And then lastly use the wrecking ball and flatten your target. Depending on the circumstances you may need to change up your playstyle, but by far this is one of the best tanking builds in the game. And like I've said, same principle works in PvP PvP and PvE. The only big difference is that instead of holding aggro, you use the same abilities in the same order on the enemy players. And then as well, you mainly want to tank and block the damage with the sword and shield, and then to stun and deal damage, switch to the warhammer, and that's about it. So now for my last and final conclusions for this build. The sword and warhammer weapon combination right now is super strong in expeditions and in general for PvP, because you can survive multiple enemies. And with the spells we have selected, you can easily hold aggro and tank all the incoming damage, and then on top of all this, on the side you can do even AoE damage. So then lastly, for our gem choice for the sword and warhammer in PvP, you want to use the Malachite gem, and then for only PvE, use the Carnelian gem, and then for all of your gear, amulets, rings and everything else, use the Enix gems. And then lastly, to find out the best weapon and gear perks, watch this video, which is titled "Which weapon and gear perks are the best for your build?" You can find the link in this video's description or scroll through my channel, and in that video I will specifically explain how perks work and which ones are the best for your specific gear / weapons and much more. So in a quick summary, if you're looking for one of the best tank builds for PvP and PvE, then try this one out and don't forget to have fun. So then going over to the second tank build, which is the Great Axe and Warhammer, and then these are the attributes you want to have. So then no matter from which level you start using this build, you first of all want to get your strength to 100 or even 150, and then start building your constitution, and around level 60 you should have 250 strength and 200 constitution. And then last but not the least, for your armor, you can this time make a choice to go with the medium or full heavy category. I have personally seen bunch of players going with the medium armor, and having the ability to have 3 medium jumps while being melee is pretty good. Or on the other hand, being a bit more tankier is better for some other players. So I would recommend to try out both these setups and see which one you like better. But like I've said, both these options are good, it just depends on what is your playstyle. So then if you choose to go with the heavy category, you want to go with full heavy armor, and for your character to look better, you can equip a shield on your back as well. Or then if you choose to go with the medium category, then your setup should be heavy helmet, heavy chest armor, medium gloves, light pants and medium boots. So then for our first weapon, we have the Great Axe, and these are the weapon masteries you want to have. So first of all, you want to unlock the first ability called the Maelstrom, and then get these 3 perks. Then afterwards unlock the second ability called the Gravity Well, and then get these 3 perks. Then from this point, now let's move over to the other side and unlock this 1 perk. And then lastly, unlock the last third ability called the Charge, and then get these 4 perks. And now from this point, you are free to pick and choose which perks you want to unlock next. Okay, and now let's move over to the second weapon, which is the Warhammer, and these are the weapon masteries you want to have. So first of all, you want to unlock this 1 perk, and then the first ability called the Shockwave, and then get these 2 perks. Then afterwards, get the second ability called the Path of Destiny, and then get these 2 perks. Then from here, let's move over to the other side and unlock both these 2 perks. And then lastly, get the last third ability called the Wrecking Ball, and then get these 3 perks, and that's it. Now again, from this moment you can spend your points in whatever way you like. So then let's move over to the gameplay, where I'll show you the best way to play this build. So first things first, for your Great Axe Q ability we have the Gravity Well, which you can just aim and shoot, and if you hit the target in that electric storm, he will take damage and get stunned. Then the second ability is called the Maelstrom, which performs a fast spinning attack, which deals damage and pulls targets closer to you. And lastly, we have the F ability called the Charge, and this is a dash ability which will damage and give you more mobility. And now let's go straight into the Warhammer, and the first Q spell is called the Shockwave, and when using this spell it will give us the ability to slam down the hammer, and all players standing in it will get stunned for 2 seconds. Then for the second ability we have the Path of Destiny, which creates a huge electric wave, and all enemies standing in this path will be taking damage in AoE range. And then lastly we have the F ability called the Wrecking Ball, and which when using strikes down the ground with your Warhammer, dealing additional damage and flattening your target. So the way you want to attack an enemy is by first of all using the Great Axe and then activating the Gravity Well, which will stun your target, and then follow that up with the Maelstrom ability, which will do damage and pull your target closer to you. Then at this point, switch to the Warhammer and use the Shockwave and then Path of Destiny. And then lastly, when all the other spells are on cooldown, hit the enemy with the Wrecking Ball and flatten your target. And then from this point, switch back to the Great Axe and keep on using the heavy attacks, and if you ever need to use the blocking system, then do that as well. And then lastly, I always save my charge ability to run away from the enemy or to catch him, so save it for later, and don't forget to use your medium or heavy jumps to escape enemy abilities, and that's about it. Like you can see with this build, there is no one best way to use your spells. The most important thing is to know what each ability does, and with time and practice you will know what to do. And then of course don't forget all the same principles and tips and tricks that I explained for the first build. So now for my last and final conclusions. This great axe and warhammer weapon combination is very good because you can still survive for very long, but at the same time deal bunch of damage. So then last but not the least, for the warhammer and great axe for PvP, you want to use the opal gem. And then for PvE, if you want to be a tank, then use the carnelian gem. But as well, if there are 2 tanks in your group at any time, you can become a DPS as well. And then lastly, for all of your gear, rings, amulets and everything else, get the Enix gems. And then again, like I explained in the first build, to find out the best weapon in gear perks, watch this video, which I will put in this video's description, or just scroll through my channel. And in that specific guide, I will explain how perks work and which ones are the best for your specific gear and weapons and much more. So if you're looking for a very powerful tank / melee bruiser build that is used by the best players and is very good for all the activities PvP or PvE related, then this is the best weapon combination for you, so enjoy! So then moving over to the third build, and for your weapons we go with the sword and hatchet, and these are the attributes you want to have. So then like you can see, you always want to split all of your attribute points to have. So divide 50% into strength and 50 in constitution. And around level 60 you should have 250 strength and 200 constitution. And lastly, for your gear you again want to go with full heavy armor, and this time you have to use a shield as well. So then for our first weapon we have the sword with shield, and these are the weapon masteries you want to have. So first things first, right off from the start you want to unlock this one perk, and then both these 2 abilities called the Shield Bash and Defiant Stance, and then get these 4 perks. Then afterwards let's move over to the other side and unlock this one perk, and then the last third ability, which is called the Reverse Stab, and then get these 3 perks, and that's it. Now from this moment you can spend your points in whatever order you like. And then going over to the second weapon, which is the hatchet, and at the start you want to unlock the first ability called the Berserk, and then get these 3 perks. Then afterwards get the second ability called the Raging Torrent, and then get these 2 perks as well. And now from here let's move over to the other side and unlock the last third ability called the Rendering Throw, and then get these 2 perks, and that's it. Now again from this point and onwards you're free to spend your points in whatever way you like. Okay, so now let's go over to the gameplay, where I'll show you the best way to play this build. And as we already have covered the sword weapon in the previous build, so I will just skip the same 2 abilities that are the same, and we will only take a quick look at the last third ability called the Reverse Stab. And this ability makes your target do 175% damage, and as we have selected the Tactician perk, not only we will do a lot of damage, but as well with a successful hit, all of your cooldowns will be reduced by 25%. So then moving over to the second weapon, which is the hatchet, and the first Q spell is called the Berserk, which after activating makes your character enter Berserk mode, which increases your damage and movement speed by 20% each. Then every 4 seconds you get health back, which can be up to 30% of all of your maximum health. And then as well the Berserk mode itself removes any stun or slow that the enemy has applied to you. Then the second R ability is called the Raging Torrent, that performs 4 normal fast attacks. And then lastly, the third ability is called the Rendering Throw, which when using makes your character throw the hatchet dealing damage and applying a rend effect, which reduces the enemy's damage absorption by 10% for 10 seconds. And lastly, when you hold the right mouse button, you'll be able to throw an axe, and as you always block all the damage with the sword and shield, so this hatchet throwing ability comes in very handy. So then moving over to the combat playstyle, and first of all I would suggest to as the tank, no matter if in PvP or PvE, from distance always use your hatchet, and with the left click keep on throwing your axe at the enemy, or in PvE this is a great way to aggro mobs on you from very far distances. So then when the enemy comes close to you, switch to the sword and first of all stun the enemy by using the Shield Bash ability, and then right after use the Reverse Stab. Then from here most likely the mobs in PvE or the player in PvP will now try to do all the damage. So your next goal is to survive, so you can activate the Defiant Stance and keep on using the blocking mechanic. Then after that ability has run out, switch to the hatchet and activate Berserk mode, which will give you speed, healing and damage increase. And on top of all this, for PvE, this is another taunt ability that will make all the mobs aggro on you. So just keep on using the auto attacks and the R ability whenever it gets off cooldown. And then lastly, on only specific bosses in PvE or in PvP for specific targets, use the rendering throw ability. And that's about it. So then for my last and final conclusions. The sword and hatchet weapon combination is definitely in the top 3 best tanking builds in the game. And if you're thinking about playing this build, then the damage, self-healing and buff/debuffs that you will get or do to the enemy will be very nice for PvP and PvE. So then lastly, for our gem choice for the sword and hatchet, you want to use the opal gem for PvP, and then specifically for PvE, use the carnelian taunt gem. And then for all of your gear, amulets, rings and everything else, use the Enix gems. And then on top of all this, to find out the best weapon and gear perks, watch this video which is titled "Which weapon and gear perks are the best for your build?" You can find this video's link in description or scroll through my channel. So what are you waiting for? Try this build out and don't forget to have fun! And with that said, now we have come to the last and final build, which for the weapons we want to use the sword with shield and spear. And then these are the attributes you want to have. So first things first, if you start from level 0, you want to get your strength to 150 and then start building your constitution. And around level 60 you should have 250 strength and 200 constitution. And then last but not the least, for your gear you want to go with the heavy category, which means using all the heavy equipment and a shield as well. And if you were wondering, then yes, this is the build that has almost every single ability that either way slows or stuns the enemy target. So then moving over to the first weapon, which is the sword, and these are the weapon masteries you want to have. So first things first, right off from the start you want to unlock both these 2 perks and then get the first ability called the leaping strike, and then get these 2 perks. Now from here let's move over to the other side and get this 1 perk, and then the second ability called the shield bash, and then get these 3 perks. Then lastly get the last third ability called the defiant stance, and then get these 2 perks, and that's it. Now from this moment you can unlock all the other perks in whatever order you like. So then going over to the second weapon, which is the spear, and these are the weapon masteries you want to have. So first of all you want to unlock the first ability called the javelin and then get these 2 perks. Then afterwards unlock the second ability called the sweep and then get these 2 perks. Then from here let's move over to the other side and get all these 3 perks. And then lastly get the last third ability called the vault kick and then get these 2 perks, and that's it. Now again you can spend your points in whatever way you want. Okay, so now let's go over to the gameplay where I'll show you the best way to play this build. So then for our first weapon we have the sword, and the first Q spell is called the leaping strike, which basically is a damage ability that makes you leap 6 meters to the enemy. Then the second ability is called the shield bash, and the spell makes you deal damage and stun your enemy for 3 seconds. And this is the longest stunning ability in the game. And then lastly the third ability is called the defiant stance, which you can activate, and for the next 8 seconds your resistance is increased. Or in PvE you can activate the spell and increase your threat level, which will make all the mobs target you. And then for the second weapon we have the spear, and the first Q spell is called the sweep, which if you hit an enemy makes him drop down to the ground. Then the second ability is called the vault kick, and if you land it you will stun the enemy for 1.5 seconds. And lastly we have the F ability called the javelin, which makes your character throw a spear, and if you hit the target you will get staggered and knock him down. So then for the actual way to play this build, you have to understand that this build is mainly meant for catching players and stunning them, so you won't do any crazy damage, but for PvP and PvE you will survive very long and will be able to stun the enemy target, so then your team will be able to finish them off. So then first of all what you want to do is use the sword and activate the leaping strike to close the distance between you and the enemy. Then right after use the shield bash ability and then switch to the spear, and now use the sweep ability, and then right after use the vault kick ability. And then lastly I usually save it for later, but you can throw the spear as well by using the javelin ability. And then from here just keep on auto attacking the enemy, or then if you ever get in trouble then switch back to the sword and shield and use the defiant stance while blocking, and that's about it. As I have explained previously, for PvP and PvE, the same principle applies, so just instead of using all the stunts and damage abilities on one target, you might want to use it on a big boss, or instead split all of your abilities between other mobs or players. The main most important thing for you to know is that what your abilities do and what is your main role as a tank. So then from here just play the game and use the abilities in whichever way you see it fit. So now for my last and final conclusions for this build. The sword and spear weapon combination is meant to deal medium amount of damage, but at the same time having the ability to stun your target so much that he won't be able to move whatsoever. And then lastly, for our gem choice for the sword and spear for PvP, you want to use the malachite gem, and then for only PvE use the carnelian gem. And then for all of your gear, amulets, rings and everything else, use the Enix gems. And then on top of all this, to find out the best weapon and gear perks, watch this video which is titled "Which weapon and gear perks are the best for your build?" You can find this video's link in description or just scroll through my channel. And in that guide, I will specifically explain how perks work and which ones are the best for your specific gear and weapons. So in a quick summary, if you're looking for the best and most annoying stunning build that players won't be able to escape you from, or they just won't be able to move in general, then this is the best tank build for you. So I hope you have fun. And that's about it. So I really do appreciate everyone for watching, guys, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any suggestions, feedback or other good tank builds that you would like to see in the next video, then feel free to leave your comments in the comment section down below. And while you're doing that, please click like, subscribe and enable that notification bell, so this way you could support the channel and you won't miss any more amazing content from me. With all this said, you have an amazing day and I'll catch you in my next video. So take it easy, peace.